The grandfather passed away and left his stepchild at 6 years old. Nobody in his relatives wanted to take care of her, as she was just like a problem for them. Finally, his 27-year-old grandchild decided to take care of her. That day, Daiki was on his way to work. He received a phone call to announce him about his grandfather's death. As soon as he arrived to his grandpa's house, a girl in all black appeared and held a purple flower in her hand. Seeing him, she said nothing and ran away in nervous. Daiki walked to the room. Everybody seemed freaked out when they saw him. When he sat down with his grandpa's body, another woman was preparing for the funeral. Daiki asked his mom about the little girl outside. After knowing that she was his grandpa's stepchild, also was his aunt, the woman curiously looked at Daiki's face and was so scared. It turned out that Daiki and his grandpa had the same face. When he was in the kitchen, everybody stood around to check his face. After that, they mentioned and discussed about the little girl. In the funeral, when the whole family were doing the last ritual, only Daiki noticed about Rin. He kept staring at her. Rin stood behind everyone. Her face showed no emotion. Suddenly, she remembered about the flowers that Grandpa took care in the garden, and quickly ran there to cut some. This was the flower that the Grandpa liked the best. Her socks were so dirty after a run. Rin put the flower into her father's hand in nervous and scary. Daiki sat down next to her. Rin asked him if the grandpa could wake up in the next days. However, Daiki gave her a short but sad answer: he could never wake up. Everybody was discussing about who would take care of Rin, but nobody said yes. Hearing the whole conversation, Daiki turned around to look at Rin one more time. After that, he asked his mother, "Can you take care of Rin?" Of course, his mom denied it. To feed and take care for a child, we needed a lot of money and effort. She blamed Daiki about knowing nothing. However, when he saw everybody kept denying about it, he stood up in angry and walked to Rin, who was sitting next to the window. He asked her if she wanted to come to his place. Rin looked at him immediately. Her eyes were saying everything. Then she held Daiki's sleeve to confirm about how she wanted to live with him. The whole family were looking at him surprisingly, and his mother was having a low blood pressure. Daiki took Rin to his house. On the next morning, he woke up in confused. Rin was standing at the bed and just like a god, she said she was so hungry. In Daiki's house, he was also planting some of that purple flowers. When he thought about his action yesterday, he felt so regret. Rin could eat 2 bowls of rice without the help of anyone. She was so good at taking care of herself. They ate together and introduced themselves, took a walk together and enjoyed the beautiful view. Although his mom warned to Daiki, take care of a child will be a very hard task. The little girl is so pitiful at this time, he answered. At night, on the way home, Rin put her head on Daiki's shoulder and fell asleep. Daiki held the luggage of Rin that he received from his mother. That was how he knew her mother's name, Masako Yoshi. Daiki brought her to a clothes shop. He innocently tried on a small dress in front of a mirror, made everybody around so surprised, because all the people in the shop are mothers and their kids. Daiki's face turned red. He quickly brought the dress to Rin. He asked her to pick whatever she wanted to wear. After a while struggling with many clothes around, she picked a pants in confuse. At that time, Daiki recognized that it would be really hard to take care for a child. She needed to go to school. When he was still sad, his younger sister called him to ask him about his condition, but also blame him about his decision. Came back home, Daiki spent his time to look for some kindergartens. The photo of his girlfriend in the table reminded him about their love. Because of Rin, they broke up. The more thinking about that, the more nervous he was. At this time, his sister called him and gave him 3 options to pick a kindergarten near his house, but he had to pick her up early. Second was near his company. Another one was further, but they could take care of her in 24 hours. The next morning, they ran together so quick in the street. They ran as wind speed and squeezed into the crowd. After took Rin to the kindergarten, Daiki hurried up to his company. Finally, he picked the option 3. The alarm clock was ringing. They started a new day in hurry. Their life just went like a circle. But their happiness wasn't last long. Daiki was so worried about Rin when she was in school. Did they feed her? Did any friend bully her at class? What was she doing? All the worried things about Rin were in Daiki's mind at the moment. When taking Rin to go shopping, he picked her clothes carefully. They played game and happy, eating dinner together. Everything was happened so smooth around Rin. Because of her, Daiki had changed a lot, and because of Daiki, Rin the little girl was always sad, became more and more cheerful. Daiki also quitted in his company to take care for her. He even discussed with his friends about taking care a child when she was a little girl until she grew up. At this time, Daiki understood deeply what his mom talked about earlier. In the kindergarten, Rin got to know a new friend, Aki. Aki's mom was also a single mom. On the next day, Daiki woke up with a wet pant in his side. He double-checked. It wasn't his enuresis. Rin was sleeping in the next bed. She was so dry. Until the end of that day, Daiki saw Rin was changing her clothes, and knew that she hid about her enuresis. Next day, he asked a colleague about this. At night, Daiki told Rin to pee before sleeping. However, she lied to him that she already did it. After hearing that, he was quite sure that Rin was afraid with the darkness. so she couldn't go to the toilet by herself. But also she didn't want to annoy Daiki. He tried to comfort her and explained that she shouldn't think too much about that. Suddenly, Rin asked Daiki, will you also die one day? At night, Rin and Daiki talked to each other about Grandpa. The grandpa had so many habits that Rin could remember. Every morning, after waking up, he would use his face towel to clean the back. He wouldn't go to the convenience store to buy food for him and her. He liked to fold the covers of candies to some boats. They had a run together every day. Sometimes, they even farted in front of the other. Rin asked Daiki where Grandpa was at the moment. He explained that Grandpa was in the tomb now, but he was always in the hearts of all the people that loved him. Just like the flower that the grandpa liked, it was planted in both Daiki's house and Grandpa's tomb. This was the secret between two of them. Back to the bed, understood that Rin was afraid about darkness, so Daiki prepared the luminous stars. Rin whispered to Daiki's ear, thank you. At that night, they slept very tight. When other friends went home already, there were only Aki and Rin in the class. When Daiki came to pick her up, coincidentally, Aki's mother also came to pick him up. Daiki saw Aki's mom. In a blink of an eye, he remembered about the time that they lived together. Before he could say anything, Aki's mom noticed that Rin was sick. Daiki was so confused, he didn't know what to do. Luckily, Aki's mom was there to help. They finally found a doctor. Daiki felt so bad when he looked at Rin was sleeping in the bed. He took some days off with her. Aki's mom also went to their home to check about Rin's condition. She was better than yesterday. She also encouraged him that taking care of a child would not be an easy thing. Two of them tried to raise their children together. One day, Daiki received a phone call from his father. He told Daiki to come to Grandpa's house. It turned out that all the relatives wanted to find somebody to raise Rin. They found a person called Miki. She could take care of Rin. Daiki refused it immediately. On the way to the airport, they had a big argument. Miki believed that Daiki stole the responsibility to raise Rin from other people. Hearing that, Daiki stopped the car and angry. Maiko got off the car. After some walks, she stopped and turned around to look at Daiki. The wind blew across the field, moved people's hearts. Daiki drove toward to Miki. Finally, he still took her to the airport. In a coincidence, thanks to the internet, he knew how to contact with Rin's mother. Daiki was so angry and wrote down all of his frustrations that he had to suffer so far from the time that Rin knew Haru didn't like her. In the next day, when Daiki met Haru, he left Rin to his parents' house. When he met her, Haru also showed that she didn't like her daughter Rin. She even said some bad things about the little girl. And Daiki didn't have the responsibility to raise Rin. Rin would bring bad effects to their lives. Although Daiki felt super angry, he still smiled when he thought about Rin. When he picked Rin up, he was so surprised to see Rin was so happy in the family with his parent and sister. Daiki's father suddenly thought about the words that his mom said earlier. He was regret because he didn't have enough brave as Daiki. Until now, he knew that Daiki's mom had to suffer a lot of things because of this family. When they came back home, Rin held Daiki's leg, slowly asked him if they can come back here again. After receiving a yes from Daiki, she smiled immediately. On the way to school with Rin, he asked her if she wanted to change her first name to Daiki's first name. Rin immediately refused it. That day at kindergarten, the teacher asked them to draw their fathers. Suddenly, she couldn't see where Rin and Aki were. When Daiki knew it, he ran hurriedly to find them right away. Colleagues of Aki's mom, her parent, sister also went to find her in worry. On the other side, Aki and Rin were going somewhere with a stranger to the tomb of Daiki's father. The whole family couldn't find her. The atmosphere around was so intense. The kids came back home by themselves. Looking at them came back in peace. The family was relieved. Their faces filled with tear. That was responsibility, worry and love. Their heavy griefs were disappeared. It turned out they went to the tomb of Aki's father to say goodbye. After the kids went to sleep, they opened their hearts to the other. Aki's mom always thought about herself. Before, she was so irresponsible with Aki. Daiki also confessed when he couldn't find Rin. He was super panic. At that time, he understood his parent feeling. Love from parent was boundless. Being parent made they understood deeply about many things. They and their kids would have a growing up journey together. When their kids were growing up, they were getting older. In the school concert, Rin and Aki were so bright and lively. Daiki was watching there and felt so happy. Rin and Aki would grow up together. The life was still going. They would move forward together. This movie was adapted based on a novel. It is the end of today's episode. Thank you for watching. See you guys in the next video.